Okay, so in this issue, I want to talk about moral decision making a little bit, right? I want us to kind of get this idea in our head that says we have to make moral decisions.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
About when is it okay to do things? So following Jesus is a moral code as well as a spiritual set of convictions. And I know some people are like, well, I mean, Christianity isn't ethics. I mean, sure it is. Actually, yeah, it is.
Well, Venn diagram, right?
It's more than ethics, but definitely there are ethical decisions to be made and moral decisions to be made when we follow the way of Jesus, right? So I cannot recommend highly enough and strongly exhort you to read the book by Jonathan Haidt called The Righteous Mind. He's got a whole bunch of books. The Righteous Mind is one of the best of them of all times. It will mess you up. Now, why will it mess you up? I'll guarantee you, if you are a political conservative, you will hate the first part of the book. If you are a political liberal, you will hate the last part of the book. I love that. That makes me feel so good because, hey, if he's poking the bear on both ends,
some objective.
He's probably doing right. So he spends the first third of the book talking about how people make moral decisions and the foundations of this guy is a moral philosopher who does research. So he did research literally all over the world and studied people in different religions, different socioeconomic statuses, different cultural environments for how we make moral decisions. And he found a universal pattern and a moral foundational decision-making matrix that was universal despite any other thing. This is how humans think. And his big thing that he found is that we all make moral decisions intuitively and then use strategic reasoning to refine and reinforce our intuitive decisions. So what does that mean? He likens it to an elephant with a rider. And that elephant is our intuition. And we make a decision intuitively, and the elephant heads off in whatever direction it's going. Now, the rider can eventually start steering the elephant some. But it's difficult and not at all linear. So, and you go, well, wait a minute, I don't make decisions like that. He puts people in these weird decisions spots to see, was there a moral foul here? Is this an immoral thing? I'll give you one that's from the book that's a particularly fun one, okay? A man decides he wants to have dinner, and he is going to cook himself some chicken, okay? So he kills the chicken, so he's slaughtered the chicken, and then has sexual relations with the chicken, and then cleans the chicken and cooks it and eats it. Has he committed a moral infraction? I look at all of your faces, look around at the other people's faces, and you're like, wait, ew, huh? Wait a minute, that's not right. And then you go, okay, but time out. So on some level, I bet you were thinking there's something inherently immoral with having sex with a dead chicken. Something in your moral code said, there. Now then you might think later, but okay, that can't be worse than killing the chicken, right? So if he's going to kill the chicken and eat the chicken, nobody's been harmed. So there wasn't any harm. This is why, by the way, that for my libertarian friends, the entire foundations of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle and the no harm, no foul policy. It does run afoul a little bit of our moral inclination to realize, there's some things that are basic infractions against human dignity. So do you see how you had an instinctive response to that later you'll try to kind of fill in with reasoning? He has all kinds of those. I'll give you another one that I think is really good from an American perspective and a different perspective, so different moral foundations. So he's identified 6 moral foundations that everybody makes moral decisions on, one of which being loyalty versus independence, one of which being the authority versus rebellion, okay? So here's the situation you get put in. You're going to go on national television with your dad, and if you will slap your dad across the face, then you will get $100,000. Would you go on TV and do that? Now, I think most folks from an American perspective, I'd say, hey, Dad, I'll give you 10 grand. You know, you cool with $10,000 and I'll slap you across the face on national TV?
In the days of TikTok, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, right? So, however, if you're from, say, a Korean family, there's just no way they would do that because the disrespect for the authority of the family and the authority of the father just would never allow it no matter what the money is. So again, different moral foundations, but we can see which moral foundation that you put this decision on, okay? And a really fascinating book. I really strongly recommend that you read it because what it'll do is it'll start to bring to mind for you what are the moral foundations that I use most strongly. What are the ones that are most important to me, okay? So for instance, there is a moral foundation of care for others versus independence, okay? And again, do I have this moral foundation? It's morally very important for me to care for others versus, nope, it's a moral foundation for me to take care of myself and to be independent of others. Well, which one's more important to you? It's kind of an intuitive issue, and it depends on who you are.
Well, but if we also tie that with principles of Jesus and that definition of love, is your interest in the best for others above and beyond yourself. I mean, you could layer that one, I guess.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. If you've been around the block a little bit and you know that there are different denominations of Christianity and different flavors of how people follow Jesus, will they look at the exact same issue from very, very different perspectives? Yeah. Very much, Adam.
Kind of carrying it back in, but you're not against Jesus for not holding other people above you.
No.
It's all equal.
So you see how we have the same issue, but we can look at it from different moral foundations, and we have to do so. And we have to think through, wait a minute, what is my ethic code? What is my moral code, right? I read through Scripture, and again, I think Scripture speaks very loudly and again to care for the outcast, care for the poor, care for the disenfranchised, care for the sojourner, care for those who are other, you know? I think God is big on that, and yet I find in a lot of conservative evangelical churches a real lack of care for that. But of course, if you call them on it, they go, no, that's not true. We do in these other ways. I'm not seeing it, man. I'm really struggling to see that stuff. Whereas some other, what we would call more mainline denominations, really major in some of those things and minor in the self-responsibility and, not just giving people handouts, but helping them up. So which one's the right one? I can't say that one is better than the other. But I think if we don't understand that, then what it really does for us as we're looking at issues like self-defense is it says, my way, if I only understand my way and I don't understand how I came to my way, then I view it intuitively as the only right way. And when you disagree with me, I don't see how you can get there, so I other you. But if instead I understand, now in this issue of ownership of firearms, right? I can tell you I have friends who are radically, staunchly anti-gun and would outlaw the ownership of firearms completely in America. Now, in case you hadn't realized it, I do not share that political belief, but I understand where they're coming from. And I understand what their heart is and why they're interested in that. And if I didn't take time to do something like read this, I really would not have a foundation to have a discussion with them on that. Because why in the world would they say that? What's their moral foundation underlying it? What do you think?
Safety.
Yeah, they're like, look, man, guns are dangerous and we want a safe world for our children. Is that immoral and bad? No, it's a moral good. I, in fact, agree with them. I totally agree with you. I want a safe world for my children. 100%. I want a safe world for your children.
But we live in a broken world.
Well,
That's the reality.
Well,
yeah.
So we have a different view on how to achieve and how to maximize the safety that's available and a different way to get there.
Yep.
Sir.
And that's what I find a lot of times on different sides of the aisle, you actually agree on the problem. It's the solutions that are, and then we tend to fixate on our position, on our solution, and then decide how
Yeah.
we're working together on the problem.
Any clash of ideas that you can't have a meaningful clash of ideas until you find the areas of agreement, the underlying major areas of agreement first. Once you find the major areas of agreement, then you can find where the roads diverge and why we get there. And when you can do that, if you don't get all the way out here to the big major like emotional one, but instead you start way down here in the smaller one that's more foundational, then we can start to have meaningful and constructive dialogue. Okay? But that starts with a reminder that we all make moral decisions intuitively. I think a lot of times what we think when we're making moral decisions in self-defense in the way of Jesus is that we think, I'm rational. I'm logical. I make decisions from a place of reason. You, on the other hand, make decisions from the position of emotion. That is horseshit. I am a human being, just like you are a human being. I make initial decisions intuitively. And then I backfill my intuition with strategic reasoning and rationality. But guess what the problem is? My intuition could be wrong just like yours. And so I think the mark of maturity is trusting that the rider can eventually steer the elephant. And recognizing, hey, wait a minute, just because my intuition says that, I could be, am I wrong on that? Am I wrong on that? Maybe I am. And maybe I need to continue to learn on that because I could be convinced otherwise. What issues could you not be convinced otherwise? I hope that list is very, very small for you. Very small for you. And instead go, no, I'm always looking for additional information. My intuition tells me this, but I could be wrong. And so I'm willing to be heard out. I'm willing to hear you out. I want to understand why you think the way you think. Now, again, on this issue of self-defense in the way of Jesus, I have pacifist friends. John, I just don't see any time where taking another human life because of how inestimably valuable it is would be worthwhile. I said, what about my life? Well, no, but that's mine with which to give. And so I choose to lay mine down because Jesus says in doing so, I'll save it. Okay, I do think that we protect that which we value, and I value my life. And I think that's an acceptable moral position to take, that nobody has the right to harm me as a bearer of the image of God. Nobody has the right to take that from me or you from you. That's yours to give if you choose to, but no one's right to take. Just like this is my body, nobody can take it from me without my consent. And if they choose to try to do that, well, that's on them. So that's my moral decision framework on that. But I think understanding it from that perspective and understanding how to approach somebody else from that perspective gives us a little bit of maturity in the perspective and lets someone else have their perspective on things too. When we get to the place of church safety, I know church security teams that are like, yeah, man, we're just not allowed to be armed. Because the denominational control, if you're Catholic or whatever, and hey, man, the bishop says no. And the bishop is who gets to decide what happens in the churches. Cool, man, you're going to listen to him? Yeah, I have to. He's the boss. Okay, cool. Again, I'm a wackadoodle libertarian. He can ask. And he won't know that I'm carrying a gun, right up until anybody needs to get killed. And then if he wants to excommunicate me, he can. But that's just me. And I understand on the other side, I know plenty of people, this is the same thing that people are like, I can't carry at work because if I get made carrying at work, I'm fired and my family loses out on my job. I lose my security clearance. I lose all my seniority. I lose my retirement. I can't risk it. Perfectly acceptable moral foundation. I don't know that I would be comfortable being in a job like that. But if you find yourself in a job like that, I totally get why you would make maybe that decision because you gotta, those risks are real too. Make sense? So some moral decision-making stuff kind of to think about.